Welcome into another edition of What Barrie's Talking About from Barrie 360. I'm Dan Blakely. On this week's program, changes to waste collection and public transit in Barrie, women taking back the night, keeping tabs on children's mental health. We meet a local pastry chef about to become a TV celebrity. And are you prepared for potential emergencies arising from severe storms and power outages? We get the conversation started after this. Big changes this week to waste collection in the city. A new schedule for some residents, new items you can put in your green bin, and adjustments to yard waste collection. You had questions. Barrie 360's Ian MacLennon got answers from the city's Associate Director of Waste Management, Stephanie Mack.
So big changes to waste collection in the city of Barrie, residential and business, beginning May the 1st. Why is the change happening?
These changes are part of a new curbside collection contract, but also some changes within the province as we transition our Blue Box program.
So the changes also involve a new waste collection schedule. I think you said about 10,000 properties will be affected. So I live in Barrie, I'm a homeowner, I rent, what have you. What's my role here to make sure that I know when my garbage is being picked up and recyclables?
Yes, so really we have a 5-item checklist just to make it easy. We know that, there are a few changes. And the first one, really important, is that everyone check their schedule. The schedule is online at barrie.ca/curbside collection changes. You'll find a link there where you can put in your address. Really, as a new contractor starts, they're changing up the routes, and we just need everyone to check their new schedule to make sure that you get your materials out on the right day. And also a reminder that curbside collection starts at 7 in the morning, so have all materials to the curb at 7 a.m. There's also some other changes that we're really excited about. One of those is pet waste in the green bin. Pet waste actually, and any organic material in our garbage is not a good thing. It actually produces methane at the landfill. And so the more organic waste that we can divert or get out of our garbage and put in the green bin is actually such a great thing. It reduces the amount of garbage. So we know around 18% of our garbage is pet waste. That seems unbelievable.
That's significant.
It is. It's about 3,600 tons every year that we're landfilling from our curbside garbage. So it's going to reduce how much garbage we're landfilling, but also help us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by keeping the organic waste out of the garbage.
Now, another matter that cropped up, of course, prior to what's going to be changing on May 1st is yard waste, the leaf collection and what have you. We know there were some issues previously, bags being left for a week or longer. You indicated that people are to leave their bag out or bags on the Monday, and they will be picked up eventually during that week.
That is correct. So yard waste will be a biweekly collection opposite to the garbage week. And materials will go out on your week at 7 a.m. on Monday for the contractor to collect them anytime during the week before Friday afternoon. And really this change is to help the contractor manage significant swings in yard waste. And we know, on the heaviest day in the summer, they might be collecting 25 tons. In the fall, after a really beautiful weekend, everybody's been out doing yard work, the leaves have dropped, we can see up to 150 tons a day. And that is really challenging in one day to get off the street. So what this collection model will allow, and it is a common municipal model that we've seen used other places very
The county of Simcoe has used it?
Correct. Our neighbors in the county of Simcoe collect leaf and yard waste this same way. And it really just allows the contractor to know ahead of time what's out on the street, to allocate resources in order to really manage it and get everything collected.
So will there be a specific day when I live on whatever street, Barrie, that there'll be a specific day schedule that it'll be picked up, or just leave it out there with the assumption it will be collected?
That's exactly it. So we will commit to getting it off the street by Friday, and our contractor will get to know the city. right? They will travel a certain way. They'll likely start on Mondays and work their way around getting to all areas. That said, there might be weeks in the fall where there's a lot of material out, and how they allocate, drivers and trucks. They'll have that ability now to allocate resources as they see fit to ensure the collection is, taken care of throughout the week.
Now, of course, people have also said too, well, with Mother Nature, sometimes like we've had, especially this spring where it's been very rainy, my leaf bags are out and they're starting to crumble. Is there anything in there that, how the contractor can assist, or is this just part of the learning curve?
Yeah, so we know there's a little bit of anxiety and fear about the state of yard waste bags, but I can tell you, for the most part, they will, sustain a week of weather. That said, we have offered some tips on the website. So rolling bags, the top of the craft bags down so that rain doesn't get in. If you're using a container, perhaps, putting a lid on it or doing something like that to really keep the weather out. But really, for the most part, the bags are durable enough to sustain a week of being out in the weather.
Okay, so it's a bit of a learning curve for everybody. I think you said too, it was 25 tons of leaves in that spring-summer period to 150 though in the fall, right? So that's a huge difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? I think what's interesting about the collection of leaf and yard waste, it seems pretty easy, right? They're leaves. It should be, but it's actually a really challenging collection to prepare for because it is so unknown what a week will bring. So with garbage, we know, if, we'll have 2 bags out per property. We know how many properties, we need to collect from or the contractor needs to collect. But leaves, we have some properties that can put, 15 to 20 bags out, and that fills up a truck pretty quickly. They have to get back to the landfill, once the truck is full, and that actually changes how it's collected. So this whole week, the 5-day collection period will really help them to manage it.
Now, big change, curbside collection, which should make life easier for people coming regarding to holidays. Tell us how that will play out. That
is an important change. We need to remember that we will be collecting now on holidays, except for Christmas and New Year's Day. So our first test of this will be Victoria Day on Monday, May 20th. If you are a Monday collection, the material, your waste will go to the curb and there'll be no shift in the schedule. And that is a change for the city.
Now, we have some recycling changes to the Blue Blocks program in Ontario. This was mandated by the province, was it?
Yes. So the city will continue to manage garbage, organics, yard waste, batteries, and that collection under our contract. But we are preparing to pass over our residential recycling program to an organization called Circular Materials. And Circular Materials is a not-for-profit organization that is the collection system administrator for the province. And these changes actually come out of a provincial regulation called the Blue Box Regulation, where producers are ultimately responsible for residential recycling here in Ontario.
Now, there won't be any changes. Residents won't see changes in how recyclables are collected, blue box, gray box, but they need to be put out on their collection day. Is that correct then?
That is correct. Yeah. So the Blue Box is actually, the program is transitioning to December 31st, 2025. And under the regulation, Circular Materials has to keep the program the same in communities. So for our city, it will still be blue boxes, gray boxes, separated materials, no change in what you can put out. And it will be put out on your regular collection day. Again, noting, check your schedule because that could have changed with the route changes in our contract.
And of course, whether it's Barrie360.com or City of Barrie, there are phone numbers people can call regarding the transition, both service Barrie for specific things, and then for the, blue and gray boxes, you contact Circular Materials?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to just say we're always here to help at the city. So Service Barrie, if there's confusion on who to call, we know there's going to be an adjustment period. We're always here to help. But essentially, the city will provide support, customer service support for the materials that are still part of our mandate and our program. And that would be garbage, organics, yard waste, business recycling, batteries. For questions regarding the recycling program, we will be passing those questions, comments, concerns to Circular Materials, and contact information for them is also on our website.
The city's website again, barrie.ca. Click on the link called Collection Schedule. Coming up later in the program, some upcoming changes to public transit in the city. Mental health, a big concern for many, a difficult thing for adults to stick handle, perhaps even more so for children and youth. New Path Youth and Family Services in Barrie reaching out to them during Children's Mental Health Week, which begins May 6th. Manager of Clinical Services, Brandy Sanders, checks in with our Will Conkin.
Why is Children's Mental Health Week important, and why should we be talking about it?
Children's Mental Health Week is really important because it brings an emphasis to and recognizing that there are a large number of children and youth and families who are experiencing mental health. As many as 1 in 5 Ontario children and youth will actually experience some form of mental health challenge. And I think what Children's Mental Health Week does is help bring light to that, helping reduce the stigma and helping individuals understand that they're not alone and that there is help out there, as well as the fact that early intervention and treatment does elicit change for them and can help grow and help them build skills in being able to navigate those mental health challenges they may be experiencing.
What should parents know, and maybe some tips for them during the week?
I think what they really should know is that it's really the idea is to get it out everywhere. It's going to be across a number of different organizations. Schools are going to be speaking about it as well. Here at New Path, there's lots of different activities and events that we would also be engaging in at schools, handing out swag, helping young people know where to get help and how to get help, helping parents as well know that help is there when and if they need it. So really just getting the word out. I think that would be really important for parents to just also take the time and understand that this is being presented and shared with them because, they're also not alone in it as parents, as the ones who are caring for these young people who may be experiencing mental health challenges.
What are some of the services at New Path? I saw there is a quick access counseling clinic and a one-stop talk. Tell me about those.
Yeah, so our quick access clinic is really our first point of contact. So how that can happen is a young person or their family or their parents can reach out via website or even our phone number, and they can schedule a session when they need it. So they can look at what is available and they can explore what supports that they're going to need. So that's our first point. And the clinicians are very helpful in spending the time and getting to know what is it that they are needing and what supports do they need. It also acts as a way of kind of systems navigation to see if there's different programs that within New Path that might also be helpful for this young person or the family. And the same goes for One Stop Talk. It's really about how can we make sure that when children and parents need support, that they have access to it. So that's something that they can call essentially almost any time, right? And not have to navigate wait lists, and they can actually spend some time getting supports in the moment.
Social media seems to be a big talking point when discussing mental health, especially with youth and even children. Maybe touch on that as well.
So social media is a really great way of being able to get information out really quickly. It's also a really great way of being able to support unity. And again, that messaging that not everybody, you're not in this alone, that lots of people experience that. However, social media sometimes can be a challenge, especially for young people and parents, if they're seeing a lot of things or they might feel overwhelmed by what they're being seen or shown on social media. So I think it's always about balancing and being able just to have open conversations, parents being really curious around what is the use of social media. Is it actually being helpful in helping the young person understand that they're not isolated and that there are supports and that the treatment works? Or is it becoming more problematic for them and they're being engulfed in it and not being able to escape it, and it's building up in them or reinforcing things that they might be feeling? So it's really about just being curious and holding the place of balance, that it can be really helpful, but there's also an area of it where it can be a challenge and increase concerns for young people.
And not just for children, but maybe an age group up in the youth kind of category. What are some tips for youth mental health as well?
Youth mental health, again, I think it's really about connecting. One of those things, right? Lots of young people, they're always seeking connection and meaningful connection. And so it's about finding those ways that you can get that connection. So it might be getting out and being physical activities and doing those things. It could be engaging in things that you really enjoy. Or if you're in a period of your world where you're trying to figure out what is it that you really enjoy, be curious and trying to find those ways of the individuals that you can connect with or the interests that you can connect with. The same would be true for parents who are navigating the adolescent world of, really how can you be curious and how can you maintain that connection? How can you support your young person to find things that they're interested in or find things or ways that your child or youth can engage with others? And again, for parents, not to personalize that you're their parent. You're there and you're going to care for them. But in that moment of adolescence, that's a time when they're starting to shift and really to build their own independence. So as a parent, it's really about what is it that they're going to need from these other connections, these healthy connections in the world, and how can you foster that and be curious around the relationships that they currently have with others, and help them seek really what is it that's going to be beneficial for them in that, and is it a time where maybe they switch up an interest and get involved in something else.
Children's Mental Health Week runs May 6th to the 12th. Where can people find more info about New Path?
Yeah, so they can find more information on our website, www.newpath.ca. And you'll also see throughout Children's Mental Health Week that there will be information posted on our Facebook page as well as our Instagram. So we get really excited when we see other individuals who are wearing the color green, which really represents this sense of growth and transformation and hope. So people will tag themselves wearing their green shirts or shining green, as we say, or if they're taking part in some of those physical activities or the wellness activities. So we also get our word out that way, is really just trying to connect in a number of different levels. But for the day-to-day information about New Path, the best option would be to visit the website.
Well, dreams do come true. Ask Barrie pastry chef Stephanie Tucci, whose work will be featured in the coming weeks on the Food Network. She couldn't say a lot about the show, but did leave a few morsels for our MJ during a recent visit to Barrie 360.
You are known as Chefany.
Correct.
You are a pastry chef, and you recently had a really cool opportunity to be on television for your skills. Tell me a little bit about that.
Amazing. So recently I've gone to compete with the Food Network on their upcoming show called Summer Baking Championship. It premieres Monday, May 13th at 8 p.m. We are very excited. It was myself and 9 other very talented pastry chefs, really just competing for the grand prize of $25,000.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So when did you guys finish filming?
End of February, we finished filming. And then we just got all the news that we can start sharing and promoting and getting the word out there. We want as many people as we can to watch it because I think we put on a really great season.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How many episodes were there?
I believe that there's going to be 8 in total. We're basically all competing for the entire duration. Somebody gets eliminated each episode. And then at the very end, there'll be top 3 competing for the grand finale.
What kind of submissions did you send to them to get this opportunity?
To be honest, it was crazy. They reached out to me on Instagram and I didn't even respond because I thought it was spam. So I saw the message and I was like, I'm not answering this. This is, someone's going to hack my accounts. I'm not even going there. And then after 2 weeks, they were like, hi, Stephanie, did you get our message? And I fully responded, sorry, is this real? Or is this a fake message? And then anyways, it ended up being very real after a phone conversation and multiple emails back and forth. I was like, okay, I'm not getting hacked. This is fine. Mm-hmm. And then it was essentially a few different interviews. It was a few different interviews followed by Zoom baking. They wanted to sort of test how you are on camera, how you can communicate while you're presenting food, see if you have sort of good on-air presence. And after that, I got the call.
So what were some of the challenges? Are you able to reveal maybe one of the more difficult challenges that they was present? Because you're obviously very talented. So they wanted to put you to the test. What was the kind of a bigger deal, if you can reveal it?
I think the biggest thing is they want to make sure that you are tested on all areas, right? So for me, I am known for cakes and gelato, but I couldn't just go on that show and only showcase cakes and gelato. I had to be really pushed to my wit's end, which I definitely feel like I was. And they really do a great job at, like, even if you're not great at something, this isn't like a cutthroat show. Nobody is going to rip you to shreds or make you feel terrible about yourself. They realize that every chef is coming in here with their own skill set that they essentially want to highlight, but it is TV. So the things you're not great at. So for myself, I'm terrible at chocolate work, and you're going to see some fun stuff.
You got to have a little bit of, mistakes in there to make it fun to watch,
you
right?
do. And at the end of the day, like, we're not robots, If you're great at everything, I just feel like life might be a bit boring. So it's part of growth. So you just, what? You're not great at everything. Who cares? You learn as you go. I was with amazing people that nobody put each other down. If one of us was stuck on something, we could lean to them, be like, hey, like, have you ever done this before? Do you know how to do this? And like, we would jump in to help each other. It's incredible.
How long have you been in this business? Because
oh my gosh,
an art form.
Yes, I've been in this industry for just over 10 years now. I initially started out in the health industry, and then I made the switch. I went back to culinary school in 2013. I lived the quintessential girl's New York dream, packed her bags and went to New York, and it was the most incredible thing. But I started out as a savory chef. So I was doing savory for most of my career. And then in 2019, I switched over to the pastry world.
Yeah? And what kind of drew you to that?
I went to Italy to do my master's in food and wine.
Sweet.
And it was so sweet. And I lived in I want to say it was kind of like a large house, or like I'm calling it like the culinary compound, with like chefs from all over the world. And we all studied together. And I lived like beside this very quaint little farm. And honestly, seeing all the raw materials there, seeing how food was grown and produced, and being around all these inspirational people, the light started to kind of like spark a little bit in me, where I'm like, I just felt very drawn to pastry. I felt very drawn to almost like the zen and the focus that came with pastry. Then I had an opportunity to work under a gelato chef he changed my life. This man had only done gelato for 25 years. He was so passionate about this one art form. And that was it. Like, I felt like I couldn't look back. I was like, this dessert is it for me. Pastry life is it for me. And now I need to become a gelato master too.
That's so cool. I love that.
Yeah.
And you have your own business here in Barrie. You've been in Barrie just a little while. You said 6 months?
Yeah, we're fairly new. I'm originally from York Region, and then I had the opportunity to live in Sault Ste. Marie. And then we moved from the Sault in September, October. And we've been here since. It's nice to be closer to family. The Barrie community has been super welcoming. So I'm just trying to grow and evolve the business here, and the goal is a gelato shop, and I'm going to make it happen.
That's awesome. Okay. And if people want to find you and taste some of your amazing stuff, how can they do so?
Absolutely. So you either can find me on Instagram at bychefany, where kind of like all the daily fun happens, or on my website at dolcebychefany.ca.
Okay, perfect. And once again, when is the show airing?
May 13th at 8 p.m. on the Food Network.
What Barrie's Talking About is a weekly podcast featuring the best Barrie and Simcoe County have to offer and more. You can get caught up and make it easy to keep up in the future by subscribing to What Barrie's Talking About through any podcast distributor. Still to come on What Barrie's Talking About, making sure you're prepared for emergencies as the summer approaches, changes to public transit in Barrie, and women take back the night. Now this.
It's cool to care. It's a well-known fact blood transfusion saves lives. It's also a well-known fact that the world relies on voluntary unpaid donations to fill the need for blood. The need for blood never ends. Canadian Blood Services in Barrie is calling on you to help save a life. Please consider donating today. Appointments are mandatory and must be booked in advance. Book today at blood.ca through the Give Blood app or by calling 1-888-2-DONATE.
Cool to Care is brought to you by the Peggy Hill team, keeping it real all the way to sold. Reach out now at peggyhill.com.
It's cool to care with 107.5 Cool FM.
This is What Barrie's Talking About from Barrie 360. I'm Dan Blakely. We talked earlier about changes to garbage collection in Barrie. Let's turn now to transit. Not so much changes, but some impending enhancements. Here again is our Ian MacLennon with Mayor Alex Nuttall.
Welcome, Mayor Nuttall. Let's talk about the new network. The wheels on the bus are going to keep going round and round, but there's going to be some significant changes. What do we mean when we say the new network? What is that?
We've really been trying to find ways to optimize and find efficiencies and also expand services. So there are a number of changes coming. One of them that you'll see it's coming down the line is the express route from the north end to the south end and back, which I think will be a welcome addition to the city of Barrie, helping people move around.
Is that the Highway 400 route?
That is the Highway 400. And then we also have transit on demand. And so where you're going to see some changes on some of the routes that may, impact some of the stops, transit on demand is expanding into those areas that have less ridership. And so what that is that you would call in for transit on demand. They would take you to the closest hub, and then you're in the system from there. And it's just like a regular vehicle, whether it would be normally like a taxi or an Uber, but it's one of the ways that we can provide better service on the main lines.
Well, according to city staff, it was launched as a pilot in August 2020, and in a report that went to council, it's been received with exceptional customer feedback. They like the convenience, I believe.
100%. And if you can imagine that if you're, too far away from a stop and you would have to walk, let's say, a significant distance, in the wintertime, that's tough. Right. And so what Transit on Demand has been able to do is to link those far reaches of homes that don't have ready service and get them into the system.
Now, it's a growing city, so the transit network has to grow with us. And that's all part and parcel of what we're seeing in terms of the Allendale station that's currently under construction and the shifting downtown. People do rely on that transit service.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit that's happening. What we were trying to do with the Allendale, and quite frankly, this is something that's been worked on for a number of years, this isn't new, is to align our GO services, our bus services, whether those are local buses or GO Transit buses. And so what's happening at Allendale is really trying to create that hub, that center for transit in the city of Barrie, whether you're coming into the city, going out of the city, or just riding within the city.
And you're looking ahead to, will the Northland or Greyhound, will they be utilizing that as well, do you know?
I think it's up to them. It's up to Northland. They've been, I think, in Aurelia at this point and aren't carrying out of Barrie, but you never know what the opportunities are going forward.
Now, someone who rides the transit occasionally will be saying, well, how much is this going to cost me? I believe the budget was about $25 million last year, Barrie Transit, $6 million recouped from fares and passes. You got to maintain the system. So what about budgeting for the user?
There's no question that it's going to cost more over time, but we have a major subsidy of transit in the city of Barrie. And so the general taxes support things like recreation centers and public transit and libraries and those types of services. And that will continue. And certainly I think that subsidy will go up. It's been going up for the past, since we've begun.
And you get federal and provincial. There's the gas tax, et cetera.
Gas tax. There's also opportunities for capital investments from the federal and provincial governments. You'll remember that we had the two buses from the feds for a pilot project, and those two separate buses are going to be able to tell us which of the systems works better and is able to achieve what we're looking for in the city of Barrie. The other piece is from the province. They've been helping to invest in new buses as well. And so, we constantly have that continuing partnership between the feds, the province, and the city on this subject as well.
Now, this so-called the new network is two-phase in 2025. There will be enhanced services to places that may not have that extra bus. I think they said Benson Drive, King Street, Morrill Road, yep. Kaplan Avenue. So going out and beyond, I guess?
Yeah, and I think that there's what we're trying to do is make sure that as the city's growing and as the population's moving, from one place to another, we're seeing some places where there's some gaps. Let's fill those gaps and use transit on demand where we need to, use a full bus where we need to. The other exciting thing is that we've made a trade for some of the smaller buses, and we've given up some of the larger ones. I'm sure we've all heard that, I saw the bus and there was nobody on it and it's driving down the street. The reality is that those types of maneuvers in terms of our fleet help to reduce cost in terms of the upfront cost, but also help to reduce cost in terms of the operation for some of those lesser routes. And so there's lots of things we're doing to find efficiencies as well, and certainly hope to see ridership continue to grow.
So this new network isn't more about taking away, as some people may believe, until they understand what's happening. This is growing, enhancing, and convenience.
Yeah, we're actually investing in the network, trying to make it stronger. It's something I take occasionally in the city, and just to A, understand it a little bit better, but B, if there's a time where, especially since I've had my my leg injury that it's going to be the best form of transportation for me at that point. And
what do you hear from the public? Maybe you're on the bus, or just what are their concerns about the transit system? Nothing's perfect, but what would they like to see improve that may be happening?
I think, first of all, the length of time sometimes it gets to take from the north to the south. That was one thing that I heard. Part of that is getting on the right bus, right? And so sometimes it's difficult. I know my mother takes the transit all the time, and she tells me I got on the wrong bus and it was an hour and a half instead of being 20 minutes, and that happens. And so I know that our team is always trying to communicate better to the community on how to get from place to place, and certainly we have the app available in order to help do that. But that was one of the things that I heard, and so I'm glad to see that the city's taking that on. And the other item I heard at the Ward 2 Town Hall, a lady came up to me and said, I don't get transit and there's no transit terminal. We're getting older and we're going to be giving up our vehicle. And it turned out, she actually was from Ward 4, but it turned out that the transit on demand had just been expanded to her area. And so she's able to now get transit on demand, get to the hub, and from there be able to get around the city wherever that might be. And so I think that for a senior, it can be tough if there isn't a stop close.
So it's a network that's just going to continue to grow along with the city, I guess. It has to.
And it has to. And I think over time you'll see the changes coming this year, next year. But there's going to be changes constantly because we're a city that's experiencing a tremendous amount of growth. And in order to be a city that folks, enjoy the quality of life, one of the things that we have to invest in is transit.
I mean, imagine when it does happen, the government says it will provincially, the two-way GO train service, that may require yet another adjustment locally.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can't have that soon enough. I mean, the two-way GO will be a huge piece for the city of Barrie. When you think about, let's just for a second use Georgia College as an example. That's a place where folks en masse could live in Toronto, come to Barrie, and then go to the college, take their classes, jump back on the GO, and go back to Toronto. I don't think we're currently set up for that because of that we don't have enough coming from Toronto at the right times. It's built really to commute to Toronto, not the other way around. And so I think that'll be a big help for the city of Barrie, for our employers here, as well as a quality of life and tourism.
What Barrie's talking about from Barrie 360, I'm Dan Blakely, joined by Grant Durfee, who is the head of emergency management for the county of Simcoe. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You are relatively new to this area, but you're no stranger to emergency management. Tell us your background.
Yeah, like you said, I just came up and joined Simcoe starting in January, so I'm fairly new up here. But my background, I've been doing emergency management for the last number of years. I actually started off about 2 months before COVID, so it was quite the introduction to the field.
Baptism by fire.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you were a paramedic at one point, weren't you?
Yeah, so as a paramedic first, did that for a number of years, went back to school, did some emergency management education, and then made that leap.
So you did emergency management in Niagara region. You've been doing it here for a little bit. Have you noticed any differences in the approach between the two regions, how people, residents, how governments deal with it?
Yeah, I mean, I was somewhat familiar as Niagara is also that upper and lower tier government. Coming up here, I noticed two things. One, the county is huge. I thought Niagara was big at 1,800 square kilometers, but here at 4,500 or whatever we are, that's giant. The other thing I've noticed up here is people are much more willing to work together. I've noticed that not just between departments, but also between municipalities, between groups, there seems to be a lot more of that cohesiveness and that welcomeness. And even though I'm new at that role, I've already found that people are ready to welcome me in, help me out, and work together towards what we need to achieve.
And we're going to work with everybody over the next week because Emergency Preparedness Week begins on Sunday. We talk with whoever's in your position every year to just get a picture of what's going on, what people need to be doing, hoping that they're catching on, and seems they are. But the most important thing, I guess, before we get into individual kind of emergencies and what to do is making sure you've got emergency kits, one in the car, and then you've got a 72-hour kit ready to go in case you have to hightail it out of the house for a couple of days. So let's talk about those two kits, how important they are, what needs to be in them.
Absolutely. So you touched on the two main types of kits. So the first we say is everyone should be prepared to go for at least 72 hours on their own, be that in your own home or if you have to pick up and evacuate. And that's everything from food, from clothing, water, but you can't forget things like supplies for your pets, things like medications, things for your children, key documents or key resources that you want to have. And it's not just physical things, but also if you have to evacuate, where are you going to go? Who are you going to contact? So making sure that information is written down is very important to have in your kit. It's what we encourage everyone to do. They talk about it with fire safety. Make a plan. If you have to leave your house, where are you going to meet in your yard? We take it one step further. If you have to leave the town, where are you going to meet outside of it? If you're at work and your children's at school and you have to evacuate, how are you going to reunite? Do they have your phone number memorized? Is there a family member in the next town over that you might use as your meeting point there? So talking about that with your family, making sure everyone understands that plan is key.
Another thing that's key is to have some cash on hand.
Yeah, like they say, cash is king. I admit I'm a bit from a generation where I don't often have cash in my wallet, but I do have some extra cash in my kit at home, just if I need to leave quick, if debit's down. I think a lot of us saw that Rogers outage from not too long ago where we couldn't pay with debit or cards anywhere. So having that extra cash can be very useful.
And it's important you have all of that ready to go on a moment's notice, not have a list and go around and be collecting it at the last second.
Absolutely, because if we have to evacuate, it's obviously a last choice. We don't plan on having to ask people to do that. But if we do, please know that it's serious. Otherwise, we wouldn't be asking. So you need to be able to locate your supplies wherever they are, get them in your car, and then away you go.
Let's talk about the car kit. What kinds of things do we need to have in there?
So we always recommend having an extra kit in your car as well. And you want to pay attention to summer and winter concerns too. If you're in the winter, obviously we're going to want things, food, water all the time, but clothing, extra blankets, ways to keep warm. Also think about signaling. How can you let someone else know that you're stuck or you need help? And then things like, do you have a shovel? Do you have, either ice melter or kitty litter, things to help give your wheels some traction is very good in the winter. And then in the summer, think about shade, think about extra water. So if you're stuck out on a hot day, what might you have to have with you?
Let's zero in on some individual things now. I should mention, too, you've got all this information on the website.
Yes. Yeah, so simcoe.ca/be prepared. If you log on there, you'll find information for multiple hazards and our overall county emergency management program.
I think there's a checklist there, too.
Yes, yeah, there's a checklist you can download. There's a whole bunch of preparedness materials and links to other sites as well.
All right, let's zero in on some specific emergencies. The most frequent, I guess, through the summertime are thunderstorms and lightning, and we have to be very careful with that.
We do, and what we encourage everyone with thunderstorms, lightning, and any severe summer weather is pay attention to your weather updates and your weather warnings. We find a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of the difference between a watch and a warning. And so we like to describe it using cupcakes. So think of a watch is you have all the ingredients to make cupcakes. You might make cupcakes later or you may not. Whereas a warning is you've already made the batter and it's in the oven. So whether you like it or not, in about 10 minutes or so, you're going to be having cupcakes. So it's the same thing with thunderstorms. If there's a watch, we ask everyone just be aware. If you're planning to go outside, keep in mind of the weather and keep checking updates. If you see a warning, consider that to mean it is going to happen and it's going to happen soon. So make sure you're prepared. Make sure you're inside. Don't be outside anywhere if you hear thunder or if you see lightning.
And there are some important things to remember if you do get caught outside. I know don't stand under a tree is one of them, but ways to protect yourself if you're in an open area.
Yeah, so obviously we want to be inside for lightning. That's the safest spot we can be. If you have a vehicle, vehicles work great too. You mentioned we don't want to be underneath a tree because those trees will attract that lightning. If you do find yourself stuck outside, just get yourself as low to the ground as possible. Huddle low to the ground. That way you're not a attraction or a antenna that's going to bring lightning to your area.
And of course, thunderstorms can morph into something more serious, tornadoes, and we have had experience with that here. And the do's and don'ts seem to change every once in a while. I remember years ago, get under a bridge, and don't do that anymore.
No, what they found now is bridges can almost function like wind tunnels, where they'll actually speed up the wind and can suck people out from underneath. Tornadoes are a tricky one. A lot of the tornadoes we get in this area have to do with the difference between the temperature over the land and the water, which can make them hard to predict because they're not the normal supercells you see in the U.S. And so with that, any tornado we get up here, if we even get a warning, it could be very, very short. So what we encourage people to do is, again, pay attention to the weather, check the weather when you go out. But for tornadoes, safest spot, indoors, in an interior room, in the lowest level of the building. Again, we don't recommend going under bridges. Also be careful because cars can be tossed and moved in large tornadoes. If you can't get inside, it's just, again, finding that lowest spot you can and hunkering down, making yourself as small as possible.
We talked about that big power outage a few years ago and the effect it had on people. What are things that we need to be ready to do and have on hand in case that happens again? I'd like to think we learned from that, and it won't, but I've been in this business long enough to know that doesn't work.
Well, it's been about 2 decades now, I think, so we've probably lost some of those learnings, I'm sure, over those years. Obviously, I'll say we still start with that 72-hour kit because that's still going to give you that first 3 days of food, water, medicine, whatever else you need. We do encourage people in know your area, know where you live. So know what other resources you could have. So say, for example, if you don't have a generator, but your neighbor does, make that connection early. And then hey, I can go and at least charge my phone and stay in touch with my family. So know those community resources that are around there. And again, work that into some of your planning. So if you've gone 4 days, now without power, what does that mean? What are you going to have to do? How much food do you normally keep in your house? That's just something to keep in mind. If your pantry has an extra day or two supply, that can be a really good emergency preparedness attribute for you and your family.
One of the questions that comes up constantly when there's a power outage is how long will food in the refrigerator last, and can I put it in the freezer?
Very good question. Now, thankfully, most modern fridges and freezers are pretty good at holding their temperature, but you got to remember, every time you open it, you're letting all of that cold air out. So we recommend try to keep them closed as much as possible. Generally, if they're closed, you're going to get at least a day for cold temperatures out of them. What we do recommend is always checking your food beforehand. If you have some type of thermometer you can place in there and watch those temperatures, that's something that's really useful. Then you know how safe that food is. But one thing that we will always do on our end in emergency management is in a prolonged power outage, and especially in the aftermath, we'll work with our partners at Public Health to get that messaging out to people and what to look for in your fridge and in your food and how to dispose of it if needed.
We haven't had any lengthy heat waves the last couple of summers, but so we're probably due. We need to be aware of what to do, what not to do in those situations.
Yes, heat waves are something, I think they're one of the underappreciated types of hazards we can get. We've seen them in other parts of the country. They haven't been here too often, but they can be quite deadly. What we recommend for people is knowing some basic ways to cool down. So remembering being in the shade, something as simple as that cold cloth over your forehead with a nice breeze can make a difference. But what we want to do is make sure we check in on the people who are more vulnerable. So maybe some of our senior populations who might be working outside, or young kids who are a bit more susceptible to that heat. Make sure we're checking in on them and make sure them and all of us are staying hydrated. Drinking lots of water, sort of slow sips throughout the day, and then staying cool and staying in that shade where possible.
All right, Grant, thanks for dropping by. Thanks for the advice. We'll look forward to people gobbling it up and carrying it with them, hopefully. And with any kind of luck, we won't have to worry about any of this summer, but I know that's not going to happen.
Thank you very much for having me. Happy to come by anytime.
It is a protest, a rally, a march demanding an end to sexual assault and gender-based violence. Take Back the Night happens tonight in downtown Barrie. It's an annual event, but make no mistake, the work in this regard goes on year-round. Haley McDonald from Huronia Transition Home and Amanda Wagner from Athena's Sexual Assault are with our Ian MacLennon.
Most people may be aware of Take Back the Night, but what's the meaning behind it?
Yeah, the meaning is really in the title. It's so many women and gender diverse folks do not feel safe walking at night. In general, women and gender diverse folks might not feel safe walking in community, with the province looking at declaring intimate partner violence an epidemic. Rates of femicide are the highest we've seen in generations. And I think Taking Back the Night really is getting a group of people together so that we can walk through the streets and reclaim them, so that we feel safe and powerful through a collective.
And does this go beyond just intimate partner violence, but just an attack on a woman by a stranger?
Yeah, Take Back the Night is really specifically about sexual violence and sexualized violence. And so absolutely, there's a lot of conversation we can have around the perceptions of what violence and gender-based violence looks like. But most of the time, it isn't at the hands of a stranger. It's at the hands of somebody you know.
And this makes sense. So does it have to be physical, or can it can be verbal?
Yeah, absolutely. There's many types of violence. Emotional abuse is enormous and something that are key red flags to look for. Sexual violence, physical violence, and also financial abuse as well. When, we always talk about violence in our organization as moments where you have no power and control in a relationship.
And what will be taking place on the evening of May the 2nd?
So on May 2nd, we are going to start with a rally at the Rotunda at City Hall. We'll have community organizations circling the Rotunda, and people can come to the event. They can connect with the organizations to learn about what they do in the community in some intersection that relates to our work and the event as well. There will also be free food, which is always a really fun thing to have. And then we will also have some incredible speakers who will speak to, again, different intersections of gender-based violence and sexual violence in particular before going through the streets of downtown Barrie and marching as a collective.
Are men invited to this, or is this a women's-only event?
So men are welcome to the event as well. Male-identified folks are totally welcome to the rally. And then if they do want to march, then we just ask that they actually march at the back of the line because we do want women and gender diverse people to lead this night, to lead the movement, because it is an issue that disproportionately affects women and gender diverse people. So it is about this group of people taking back that power. And then if male-identified folks want to support, they're welcome to do so at the back of the line.
Now, a lot of organizations like yours talk about ending sexual assault, gender-based violence, or ending homelessness. There's always the word end. Is that actually achievable, or what metrics do you look for when you say, hey, we are making progress? Because you gave some numbing stats off the top that aren't good.
Yeah, I think that's a really tough question. I think right now we're really lucky in the province of Ontario. In December, we signed on to the National Action Plan of Gender-Based Violence. And what we're seeing is there hasn't been an enormous amount of protest or progress. I think we assume sometimes we're post-Me Too, and that means more people are talking about gender-based violence. But what's really happened is more people are talking about it, but not necessarily the prevalence is reduced. With more folks feeling less shame and blame and less silence around violence, it really demonstrates the need to have more services. Last year in Ontario, we had 58 femicides and 5 women murdered in 12 months. That's more than one a week. And when I started in this organization 10 years ago, that number was 28 women in the province. And so I think sometimes we can measure progress through stats, but when we talk about consciousness raising and different movements like Me Too, where more folks are talking about it, those stats right now are increasing. And is it increasing because prevalence of violence is increasing, or is it increasing because we're not waiting until 40 years later to finally be able to disclose to somebody what's happened to us?
So a person who is a victim has to talk about it, but how critical is it that you also get the supports you need from police, from the court system, and do you see changes there?
Yeah, I think one of the most critical pieces is, especially for our organization, regardless of intersecting with police services or health services, is that the individual gets whatever they need and they're met with compassion and empathy. And sometimes that goes into training, that if somebody walks into a police station and says, I've experienced violence, that they're met with compassion and understanding. And I think as well, looking for women who and gender diverse folks who have experienced sexual violence, they really just need to be met with empathy and kindness and provided that plethora of supports and not prescribed what to do. I think often there's a lot of pressure on folks that you've experienced something horrible, you've experienced trauma, and you have to go to police and report it. You have to do that. Absolutely. It is an option. Our organization will walk you through that option, but we also want to make a space where there isn't pressure to do anything, that you just get your needs met in that moment.
And that's our program for this week. Thanks to Ian, MJ, and Will for their input, to Matt Ladder for his technical touch, and to you for listening. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to What Barrie's Talking About, rate it, review it. You can also keep up with What Barrie's Talking About on X at Barrie360, on our website, Barrie360.com, and there's our daily Kickstart podcast available from any streaming service and on our website. I'm Dan Blakely. Hope you'll join us again next week.